So Monica, you actually are a trained physical education teacher.
Yes, that's right.
So we often hear about how kids today are not fit and they don't exercise enough. Do you think that's true?
I think it is true, yes. I think kids these days spend a lot more time on the computer than they used to. So, of course, that means less time outside and getting fit.
Now, in some countries, there's a big debate about how much fitness kids actually do in school. So in your country, in New Zealand, do kids still do a lot of fitness actually in school?
Well, reasonably recently, the PE curriculum got amalgamated with the health curriculum. So PE and health were considered to be important in school. And the health side of the curriculum is often taught in the classroom. And of course, the PE side is often taught outside the classroom. And there is always debate about how much kids should be doing inside school. In fact, very recently, now that it has become quite a big problem in New Zealand for teenagers, there has been talk about increasing the number of PE lessons that students have. But the current Prime Minister, I think, believes that the emphasis should be put on out-of-school activities like clubs and encouraging students to become more involved in that side of things.
What do you feel? Do you think that it should be?
I actually agree, to be honest, because I think if you increase the number of PE lessons that students have in a week, it doesn't actually necessarily increase their motivation to be involved in physical activity. But if, like he's suggesting, you increase the opportunities outside of school, students maybe become involved in a sport that they choose, that they like to do, and they hopefully can take it on as a lifetime sport, which is important.
But wouldn't the counter argument be that only kids that actually have a natural inclination to play sports will want to join those clubs, and that the kids that are more sedentary or don't enjoy physical activity won't join a club, and so you need to actually make them do fitness in school?
Yeah, that's true. That is a counter argument, and a very good one.
So I guess
to argue on some other occasion. Of course, I can talk about that side of the argument as well, if you want me to.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So basically, you say it's both sides make a good point. Okay, Monica, we're going to debate winning in sports, especially for young people. So do you think that winning should be stressed with sports with, let's say, high school athletes?
Well, it depends on the situation and what they're training for. But generally, I think that winning is overemphasized in sport. I think that participation is more important. Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Well, I think if you concentrate too much on winning, then the problem is if you don't win, you don't enjoy the sport. So the emphasis is shifted from enjoyment to basically results. So I think it can be quite damaging.
Right. Oh, I kind of agree with what you're saying. And actually, I played high school sports, and I was never very good. And I always wish I participated more than I did. But I actually think that the focus on winning in some ways is quite important, and that it does serve a good purpose to have a focus on winning rather than on participation. I think the main reason is because when you focus on winning, that drives everybody to be better. So if you want to win, if you want to be on the team, etc., you have to force yourself to be better, and it's the carrot on the end of the stick, and it makes people train harder, work harder. It sets a goal for them, and it kind of prepares them for life. That sometimes you fail, and sometimes you don't get what you want, and so that's why sports and the whole focus on winning is good, because it's exactly how life is in the real world.
I would tend to argue the other way and say that actually sport doesn't reflect life in terms of winning and losing. I mean, let's take a work situation. It's not about winning or losing. It's about cooperating with people that you work with. And so if you have had an upbringing where you've been in a sports team that has been overly competitive, you could transfer that competitiveness into a workplace, and it can be counterproductive because it may mean that you're just not very good at being a team player in a work environment.
That's actually a really good point. But you could also argue that actually, even a work environment is like sport, and that you have teamwork and you have to work together. And if you don't work together in a very productive way, maybe you'll be out of a job or your company won't be productive. So you need to have that instinct to continually drive to be better than other people. And it sounds really brutal, but I think that's just how business works.
Well, you're talking about work being business, but I mean, I'm a teacher, and it brings me to quite an interesting discussion that's taking place now in teaching, which is two different kind of political views, really, in terms of teachers, because people want high standards in terms of their teachers, and one idea is to rate teachers in comparison to other teachers and basically give the top teachers incentives so that they get paid more than teachers who aren't as good as them. But the counter argument to that is that it creates a really hostile environment in the workplace, and in a school where you really need teachers to work together. I'm not sure that that's the best way to go.
Yeah, well, that's another debate for another day. But,
is that a cop out or what?
Okay. So, Clan, you're from Trinidad and Tobago, and you were saying that your country has a very diverse multicultural mix.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Oh, sure. Trinidad and Tobago mostly were made up of people from African descent, who came as slaves, and Indians who came from India mostly. I think we also may have some from parts of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. But they came as indentured laborers closer to when slavery was being abolished. And these two groups actually make up the two largest ethnic groups in Trinidad. However, there's a lot of mixing. It's very difficult to find someone in Trinidad and Tobago who is extremely purely of one ethnic group, because everyone is sort of mixed. We have also a lot of whites or Caucasians who are native to Trinidad and Tobago, who speak exactly like me with my Caribbean accent. And many people find it very strange because they will walk around in Trinidad and think that they're tourists, but realize that they're actually native Trinidadians. And many also come from Europe to settle in Trinidad after retirement and have their families here. So this is how they came to stay here. We have a very large Chinese population, and it's growing because now the government is encouraging immigrants from China to come in to help us with our development to build our capital city. So we have a lot of Chinese. We have a lot of Colombians, Venezuelans, people coming from South and Central America, migrating to Trinidad because Spanish is now being promoted as a second language for Trinidad. So street signs in our capital city are in English and Spanish. So with all of this mixing of different people, it's very, as I said, very difficult to find one person who is of just one ethnic group. And it's reflected in our food, it's reflected in the kind of music we listen to, sometimes in the way we dress. For me, for example, I'm mostly of African descent, but my dad is mixed with people from South American ethnicity and Chinese. So, as I said, although I am mostly African, everybody still has a little bit of something in them.
Is there any natural disasters which happen?
Yeah, there's plenty of natural disasters. Guam is actually right on the coast of a reef formation called the Marianas Trench, and underneath in this trench is the lowest part of the world, the deepest part of the world.
Wow.
Yeah, so if we joke about it, we joke that Guam's highest mountain, Mount Lam Lam, is actually the highest mountain in the world if you count off from its base, which is in the Marianas Trench, the lowest part of the world.
Wow, that's amazing. So there must be good diving if you talk about barrier reefs.
Yeah, there's plenty of good diving. It's got really great diving like you would find in Hawaii or in the Great Barrier Reef. And many tourists from all over Asia come to Guam to scuba dive because there are great spots, and it's the closest U.S. soil they can get to.
Ah, I see. But in Australia, in the Great Barrier Reefs, there's lots of dangerous animals. Is that the case in Guam as well? Or?
Well, actually, that's funny you should ask. There has been a recent article about a guy in Guam, a very young guy who was scuba diving, and he got stung by a lionfish.
Oh.
But that is the extent of the dangerous animals of Guam. You'd have to go out into the deep sea to find more dangerous animals. But I think the most dangerous ones we have are quite small. Things like the lionfish, which I just mentioned. He just got stung, but it wasn't anything terrible. We do have reef sharks, but they are not great white sharks, so they're quite small. And smaller poisonous things like triggerfish. Those you just have to be careful about whenever you're scuba diving. But other than that, there's not much dangerous in the sea.
Great. In Australia, there's lots of snakes as well. Is there snakes in Guam?
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of snakes in Guam. One of which is very famous is the brown tree snake. Now, the brown tree snake was brought over to Guam a long time ago in cargo ships when it hid in the cargo, and the cargo was unloaded onto the docks of Guam. So when these brown tree snakes were accidentally released onto Guam soil, they subsequently destroyed most of Guam's bird population. Can you believe that?
Oh, that's amazing. So, yeah, introductions like that can cause disasters for wildlife.
Yeah, exactly. And because these brown tree snakes destroyed most of the bird life on Guam, we've lost a lot of beautiful tropical birds that used to live on Guam. Another thing that I can think of that was introduced to Guam, but isn't a wild animal, is a wild plant. And we call it a Japanese bonsai leaf, actually. And I believe bonsai means suicide or something in Japanese. But what these leaves do is that they grow and grow, and they look like vines. So they cover loads and loads of trees and good wildlife that are out there. Plant life. And they keep these plant life from growing because they essentially ambush them and keep sunlight from ever reaching them.
Oh, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So if you can imagine a building covered completely in really thick vine, that's how these Japanese bonsai leaves work. They completely shroud and cover all of the good plant life that we have on Guam.